Okay, folks, gentlemen, how was that? Did you enjoy the mini journeys we've been doing so far?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yep,
So,
indeed.
so did you notice how, like, when you do your own memories, you have a memory of being in nature, a memory being near water, and a memory being somewhere high up, right? And of course, to you, they feel different because they're personal and they're linked to all kinds of personal things, right? But when someone took you to their memories, which you have no associations to, right? You haven't experienced their life, so you don't know what it means for them. Do you notice that still each location, in Earth, more nature-based location, a more water-based location, a more height elevated based location, felt different to you? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think so.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's evoking our personal memories.
In part, yes, but also evoking your embodied cognitions, right? So
Hmm.
we all learn things as we're growing up, pretty universally, like things like up is good, down is bad. Why? Because adults are taller, so they have all the height. So height is a signal of more power, shall we say, for example, right? In the system that I'll be showing you for creating journeys, we're going to be working with the four elements, earth, air, fire, and water. Why? Because they symbolically mean different things. We'll get into this a little bit more tomorrow, right? But you're already beginning to notice how an earth experience, which is in the woods, for example, and a water experience, which is in a lake, feel different because it's activating a different set of symbols in your unconscious. And your unconscious, its natural language is symbolism, right? We have Joseph Campbell to thank for The Hero with a Thousand Faces, where he demonstrated, and actually Carl Jung did the same thing. He demonstrated that across all cultures, there are key symbols, key motifs that keep repeating. They are elements of the human psyche that transcend culture, although they're, of course, also embedded within culture, right? So your
Hmm.
personal memories are your personal culture. And then someone else's memories that you're going in there are that transpersonal culture, which goes more towards that human experience. Is that concept making sense to you guys?
Hmm.
Right? So what we want to get good at, if you want to become great facilitators of hypnotic journeys, is to really understand how that symbolism works. So when you construct a journey, you're essentially talking to the unconscious mind in the language of the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind will respond in two languages. One is more symbolism. When you ask for a scene that is artfully vague. In other words, a few core sensory details to anchor it in, and then some open-ended things that they can fill out themselves. The unconscious will respond to you with symbolism because it will assume that you meant something that's meaningful to them, right? It'll also respond in emotions, in feelings. That tells you whether your symbolism is hitting well. If you're trying to go, for example, which we'll get into later, a shadow journey that is meant to evoke a unconscious complex or a neurosis that you want to alleviate, a problem, in other words, and the person is just loves it, it's just beautiful, it's fantastic, they're not evoking a shadow at that point even though you may put in elements of horror or darkness to tell them this is what you're looking for, that person has reinterpreted it as a more empowering symbol rather than the challenging symbol, right? And you need to know this so you can get a gauge of how well your journeys are impacting your groups. Hence, talk to your groups, see how they respond, and see how their life changes. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Yes.
So, and to some extent, you guys, I think, already know the answer to this, but let's do this dramatically. Would you like me to reveal to you finally, once and for all, this time only, the secret Rosetta Stone for hacking the unconscious code? How do we understand symbolism? And how can we create these elaborate? I mean, did you guys enjoy the journey we started with today? From the
Sure.
cave to the dark enchanted forest. Yes?
Hmm.
Um, we'd like to know how to create those journeys with relative ease, actually make it fun, right? It becomes almost like a hobby for you, right? The answer to this, the secret to creating powerful symbolic journeys lies in analogies. All symbols are analogies. It's saying this thing is like this thing. And we're going to talk about this thing in order to really just talk about this thing. It's the essence of Ericksonian storytelling. It's the essence of Jungian active imagination. It's the essence of hypnotic journeys, because all of them are doing the same thing. We're talking to the subconscious in the language of the subconscious. And the analogy is how the conscious mind learns to understand what the unconscious is saying and learns to speak to the unconscious in its own language. Does this make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Questions or comments on that concept?
I don't know if it's relevant, Igor, but it sounds like what we're doing here is similar. That I think you mentioned about the Ericksonian stuff. It sounds quite similar, although we're doing it in the second person. That we're still we're in essence using the symbolism to evoke further symbols and emotions. But so it's very similar to an Ericksonian, although that might typically be a little bit more third person, though it doesn't have to be.
Yeah,
but this is primarily second person.
It tends to be more anecdotal style stories, whereas this is the more experiential, like a first person shooter versus a third person, I guess I would call it that way. Let's bring Lucas up as well whilst we're here so we can answer his question. I'll come to you in a second for me, Lucas, right?
Yeah, thank you.
So yes, the essence behind Ericksonian stories is the same as the essence here, right? It works on the symbolic code, which is the analogy, and then triggering associations, right? We're doing both because the analogy is created by associations, and associations is the primary reasoning process the subconscious mind uses, right? So we have associations being the reasoning process, symbolism being the language, and emotions being, if you will, the conclusion. It tells you what the symbolism means. If you don't have feelings about something, then chances are the unconscious message is being confused or at some level being repressed. The repression part's fine. We will work out how to decode that in time. But if it just doesn't impact the person at all, there'll be no emotion. And then that gives you a clue, at least, that either you hit on something really big, so they have to have no emotion to keep them safe,
Like it's
or
suppressed.
exactly, if it's suppressed, or you've completely missed, right? It's an extreme either way. You get the idea?
Right. Because if it was somewhere in the middle, you're saying they would have some kind of reaction,
Yes,
feeling.
and the emotions tell you how the unconscious mind has interpreted that. And then, of course, the symbolism will corroborate that as well, right? Lucas. Okay, so please go ahead, Mark. Yes.
Oh, I just because you've mentioned them a couple of times now, so it's coming up in my brain from the Ericksonian work. Will we get into how to seed an open loop to have them?
No need.
That's
You see, so the difference between Ericksonian stories versus journeys. Ericksonian stories, because they are more indirect, they require volume to create a pattern that the unconscious mind picks up on.
right.
In journeys, will be directly indirect, right? It's a little bit more like the NLP style things, where you're very overt about what you're doing, right? But it's still covert in the sense that the person themselves will still have to do some work
Right.
to understand what the unconscious mind is telling them. Make sense? So that's why a single 10, 20-minute journey can achieve a similar impact of what might take Ericksonian stories 1 or 2 hours of repetition and telling to create. So it's a more efficient mechanism. But when it comes to effectiveness, of course, it's the beauty of the Ericksonian approach is it's more resistant to resistance. It's harder to resist an Ericksonian story because you don't know what's going on and the conscious mind doesn't have any insight into what's being suggested. Whereas with a journey, you want conscious insight to be generated because you're bringing the conscious and unconscious mind closer together through the medium of the journey. Make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.